Welcome to There's More to the Quote. I'm your host, Lauren, and together we will dig into the origins of our culture's most repeated quotes and how they inform the way we relate to ourselves and each other. Thank you for joining me for minisode number 1 of There's More to the Quote. Today, we're going to be talking about the quote, "Our country is more divided than ever before." I noticed that during the last few weeks of negative 45's presidency, mostly in the media, I was hearing the same old statements about our country being more divided than ever before. And of course, usually they point to the fact that 81 million people voted for Biden, 73 million voted for Trump. And how could these 73 million vote for Trump when he has shown how unstable and racist he is? There will always be people divided on issues. But we do want to make it clear, I do want to make it clear that racism is not a disagreement. With that said, the idea that Trump and his gremlins are causing some division, it's a little disingenuous, y'all. Okay. So yes, we know the Republicans, we had a lot of elected officials, Congress people who were talking about stop the steal after the election had been called. They were in Georgia, across the country, that somebody stole the election. Not their election, right? They were properly voted for, but they just voted incorrect. They just stole the vote from Trump. They didn't steal it from them, And now the funny part to me is that if you want to say, well, Trump is different, they said like, no president has ever done this before. Okay, maybe Trump is different because usually presidents, people in Trump's position, usually they have plans for their power. Usually they're thinking about their future. Trump, on the other hand, is all about himself. He throws on mama under the bus if he could. Maybe that makes him different from other presidents. But the racism and white supremacy is pretty much the same. And the sentiments of the insurrection is what they said that they came to talk about. And what those of us who are against them believe, I honestly don't think that they're too different from how other Americans thought in the past. So today I just wanted to quickly talk about the other times in history where the division in the country would give this division a run for its money. These are times that the country should have been divided. Most people should have been like, man, I can't believe this is going on. And they weren't. So I want to talk about the times that we should have been more divided than we are now. Number 1, the Republicans, the party of Lincoln. They freed the slaves. That's what they keep telling us, They make sure we know. They gave up on those enslaved people that they freed. They gave up on them because they eventually joined with the Democrats and Reconstruction was ended. And that helped pave the way for the KKK to continue to terrorize. And for films like Birth of a Nation to continue to be seen as accurate and necessary for the story of America and how great it is. That didn't divide. That should have divided people. The fact that Reconstruction was ended should have been a division, but it wasn't. The beneficiaries, the Black people, were probably like, hey, what's going on? But it wasn't that big of a deal to the people back then. Jim Crow. Black people who paid taxes, by the way, they were intentionally not allowed to have their human rights, which slaveholder and President Thomas Jefferson, he told us in the Declaration of Independence, from who they say was an oppressor. They're declaring independence from an oppressive government or king. That everyone is given rights, unalienable rights by their creator. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Well, that's not what they gave Black people. And even those Black people who didn't live in the Jim Crow South, they experienced the same disenfranchisement. And it's not like there was division among white people. Yes, there are some of them who gave money to organizations whose purpose was to fight for the freedom of Black people. And some of them became a long time ago, obviously, presidents of HBCUs, and white people started HBCUs, all of that. But see, none of that addressed the elephant in the room. The most interesting part is that a few white people even died in the fight, and other white people as a group moved on. And I'm not just talking about in Charlottesville where Heather Hyde was murdered. I'm talking about they didn't storm the Alabama state capitol when Mrs. Viola Louisa was murdered, supporting the fight of black people to finally have their rights as American citizens. The white people who weren't the insurrectionist type didn't even storm the capitol. And the FBI, who was a part of the murder, they just continued the COINTELPRO propaganda and spying, and we all know this. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan, signed into law the Civil Liberties Act. It's a very ambiguous name. It gave reparations to Japanese Americans. They were forcibly removed from their homes in the 1940s and put into internment camps. And surprise, surprise, Republicans opposed it. They opposed the Civil Liberties Act. They didn't oppose the forced removal. The Party of Lincoln, guys, the Party of Lincoln. Free the slaves. That's what they say. And it makes me think about the 40 acres and a mule and how that was something at some point. And then it was just nothing at another point. It was shut down. It was done. And there was no majority of white elected officials who fought against it. Like, no, we need to give them their 40 acres. The Party of Lincoln. We need to give them what we promised. No, they just moved on. In Little Rock, Arkansas, parents, we've seen the video. Maybe we haven't. You can YouTube it. We've seen the video of parents screaming their spit just on these young black children because they want to integrate. And the integration was just so detrimental to their lives. Was there division when the children were being ripped from their parents at the border during the Trump administration? Put in cages, raped. Who knows what else happened to them? Adopted by random people who adopted them? Just some random person adopted some child at the border. Like, it's just like, what? There are people who saw their humanity and people who didn't. I would say that was a big division. That was a divide. But nobody said we're the most divided we've ever been. Some people don't care about children and some people do. Like, that wasn't listed as a division. And I haven't even talked about Native Americans. I didn't even get to all the stuff they've been through. So this country has been divided on race for a very long time. This is not about Donald Trump. What happened is his narcissism, his selfishness, his growing up, the epitome of a white man, the epitome of whiteness. Some white men don't even get to the levels of Trump. As free in his whiteness as he can be, all he did was just stir up what already existed in this country, in many Americans. There's no healing, as people love to use that word, because the wound is still being picked at. We ain't even put a Band-Aid on it. We ain't got no peroxide. We ain't been to urgent care. We just letting it fester. Infections is getting in it. And sometimes it look like it's healing. And then an infection pop right on back up. That's what this is. That's what the white supremacy is. That's what the racism is. And the truth is, the division is that. And some of us are on one side and some of us are suffering on the other side. Earlier this week, at the COVID memorial, President Biden, we got a new president, he talked about healing and he said, to heal, we must remember. I think that it's a good saying. It's a good quote. We can start there, but you need to go further, right? So we need to be remembering the past wrongs that have happened to people that may have caused the quote unquote division, which the division isn't a difference, right? Differences people will have. A deep division that we have is something different because people aren't held accountable. Laws are put in place, but certain people are under the law. Certain people aren't under the law. If we aren't talking about what happened, holding people accountable, changing the laws, doing all that, well, how can the country heal? And when you think about it, most of the 400,000 deaths from COVID probably could have been prevented if we had someone in office who actually cared. Now, I don't know if we'll ever have this healing we need to heal, along with the whole division quote. I don't know if that's going to happen in our lifetime. Reconciliation, I don't know on the grand level it needs to, because that would require racism being eradicated, called out, white supremacy. Yes, at the inauguration, President Biden did mention white supremacy, and they say that no president has ever mentioned it before, when kind of like, why would they mention it? Like, the whole government is built off of it. The whole country is built off of it. So, and I'm not giving up, I don't think that healing will happen in my generation, and because of my ancestors, because of what I just know about people who've fought the good fight, I'm not giving up either. Even though this is a mini episode, before we go, I want to talk about some resources that you can use based on this quote. And I only have one resource, really, and that would be the Poor People's Campaign by Reverend William Barber. So the People's Campaign laid out their 14 policy priorities to heal the nation for the first 100 days of the Biden administration. So if you want to know what could possibly help with the quote unquote division, well, they laid out some policy things that need to happen. And so I'm going to leave a link to that, and so you can go read it. Well, that concludes our minisode, and I hope you'll join me next week for another episode of There's More to the Quote.